The Flavian dynasty left behind some of the greatest monuments in ancient Rome. Vespasian built the Colosseum, and his younger son, Domitian, built the definitive palace of the emperors on the Palatine Hill. What about Vespasian's older son, Titus? Let's examine the man, his achievements, and short reign from 79 to 81, in particular his famous arch, its location in Rome, and relationship to its surroundings, and ultimately why we still have it. The Arch of Titus is a testament to Titus's great achievement, not his stint as sole emperor succeeding Vespasian, but rather his definitive action, sacking Jerusalem, assisting his father Vespasian to reconquer Judea. Nero had sent his top general Vespasian in 66 to quell the violent uprising in Judea, which lasted until 73. When Nero committed suicide in June of 68, it was a tumultuous year for the city and the entire empire. The so-called Year of the Four Emperors, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and finally Vespasian, the last man standing, concluded in December 69. The war went on in Judea with Jerusalem falling in 71. Vespasian's return to Rome concluded with a triumphal procession with his son Titus in 71. His younger son Domitian accompanied them on horseback. The war and the eyewitness account of the triumph were narrated and described by Josephus in his Jewish War. In particular, he gave sharp details of the spoils of war in the military parade, including the menorah, taken from the temple in Jerusalem. Dying in 79, Vespasian left Rome richer with a new temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, which had been destroyed in the Civil War riots, the Temple of Peace, which housed many of the treasures from the Temple of Jerusalem, including the menorah, and of course the greatest amphitheater of all, the Colosseum. His son Titus, as co-general in the war, received a magnificent triple arch in the Circus Maximus in AD 71. First discovered in the 1920 excavations, it has been further investigated and recently is on display, that is the remaining blocks and the foundations in the Circus Maximus Archaeological Park. Succeeding Vespasian as the older son, Titus began a temple to the divine Vespasian in the Forum. Titus also contributed to the area around the Colosseum by building the Baths of Titus on the Oppian Hill. And he himself would inaugurate the Colosseum with 100 days of games, immortalized in Martial's Liber Spectacularum. But Titus's brief reign, 79 to 81, was cut short when he got pneumonia and died. What actually were the highlights of his reign? Well, besides opening the Colosseum and constructing the Baths of Titus, disaster marked his short reign. He had to take care of the area of Campania devastated by the eruption of Vesuvius, including the destruction of Pompeii, which took place in the fall of 79, according to new archaeological investigations. And in 80, a violent fire burned down the Campus Martius, and he just started to rebuild the area up, but it was really taken over by and completed by his successor, his younger brother, Domitian. Now, Domitian deified his brother and completed the Temple of Vespasian, now adding Titus the god as well into the temple located on the Capitoline slopes overlooking the Forum in 87 AD. He also is responsible for the Arch of Titus, which was created in 81, and we will take a look now at the various characteristics of this all-important arch, dedicated to the divine Titus, son of the divine Vespasian. And the inscription here shows it is the Senate and the people of Rome who dedicated it, but ultimately we know that it's Domitian who was pushing his own legitimacy by emphasizing the deification status of his brother following that of his father. Now, the location is prominent at the beginning of the Clivus Palatinus, leading its way up to the new palace that was to be constructed by Domitian. Originally, it was next to the Colossus of Nero on the same mound known as the Velia Hill. Of course, so much of the Velia Hill today has been taken over by Hadrian's Temple of Venus in Rome, that still stands today. And in the construction of the Temple of Venus in Rome, Hadrian saw to the moving of the colossal statue, the Colossus of Nero, down to the piazza next to the Colosseum itself. Now the arch is quite impressive still today. We see it stands over 15 meters in height and it's 13 meters in width. But why does it appear the way that it does appear? Well, in the Middle Ages, the Frangipani family added to it. It was part of a fortification wall circuit. And in the 16th century, Pope Paul IV made sure that there was an oath of submission by the Jews in Rome. And we see in this Piranesi print in the 18th century that it really was in a lamentable condition. It was pretty much wrecked. The decision was finally made to restore this impressive monument in the early 19th century. Stern started it in 1817. It was continued by Valadier and completed in 1821 under Pius VII. That's why when we look at it today, we're seeing something that was essentially dismantled and rebuilt. The center of the inner arcade is an original Pentelic Greek marble, and the entire outer portion has been reconstructed in travertine stone. It is one of the greatest restoration conservation projects in the city. And so we see this important inscription by Pius VII facing the Forum, and it's on the opposite side that we have the original inscription still preserved, Senatus Populusque Romanus, Divo Tito Divi Vespasiani, Filio Vespasiano Augusto. So the Senate and the people of Rome are dedicating this to the divine Titus, son of the divine Vespasian Augustus. Now let's take a look first at the exterior. We have victory figures and the spandrels. We have keystones decorated by individual gods. And there's a small narrative frieze, which shows a scene of the triumphal procession that Titus would have taken place in with his father. And this is really stunning that we can see in the images from the blocks of original Pentelic stone and then trailing off to the actual reconstruction portion made of travertine stone. So it's a very accurate reconstruction here in that it traces along the remains of the columns, the capitals that are missing, the frieze that would have continued all the way around on all sides of the arch. Now let's turn to the key scenes that are preserved from the interior of the arch. We have three main panels that are preserved. Here is the triumphal procession of Titus in his chariot on the right-hand panel. On the left, we have the spolia, spoils of war that are carried by the Roman soldiers in the same procession in 71. And then overhead, we have the apotheosis of Titus, his ascendancy, his becoming a god. He's now deified. So in this panel of the victory procession, it is Titus in a chariot accompanied by the goddess Victoria herself. There is a goddess that leads the four-horse chariot. Looking back at the emperor, it is Roma. And this is stunning in that gods are now in the same panels as the living. This is a novelty in the historical relief panels of ancient Rome. And in that chariot, then we can see the outstretched wings of Victoria. This is not a person dressed up like the goddess, it's the goddess herself. And at the base of the chariot, there's a bare-chested man that is the genius of the people of Rome, and a togate figure, the genius of the Roman Senate. So SPQR also accompanies allegorically the emperor in his chariot. Then we turn to the apotheosis. You have the cremation of the deceased emperor, in this case Titus, and when you have the funerary pyre lit, an eagle is released, and here we have then that semblance of the soul and the actual physical representation of Titus ascending on the back of that eagle. What a great evocative image. The other panel shows the spoils of war. and we do see the masterful carving and the realistic depictions of some very important elements in that procession. We have the showbread table from the Second Temple of Jerusalem. This was gilded, if not solid gold. It was important to the Jews, and it was displayed as a great trophy. We have the menorah, the famous oil lamp from the Second Temple in Jerusalem. This was then placed in the form of peace on display for centuries. And of course, the soldiers carrying the spoils of war and placards that would have had slogans are going through an arch, and the arch has on it 2 quadrigas, so 4 horses and a single horse, which seems to reflect the reality that Domitian was riding that single horse with the quadriga of Vespasian and the quadriga pulling Titus. And then we can see the position of the relief in the context of the entire arch, both the procession on the right in the quadriga and the procession of spoils on the left. And we can call all this together kinesthetic art. It's because the soldiers on the left and the right of the chariot are heading down toward the Roman Forum. They're heading down in that very procession route that Titus once would have taken with the soldiers in the great triumph of 71. So we want to consider the importance of this topographical location, not just the beauty of it today and this beautiful restoration of this arch, but we want to consider its placement in the topographical realities of the Velia Hill, near the Colosseum built by Father Vespasian, and of course at the base of the Clivus Palatinus leading up to the palace of Domitian itself. This is a great example of relief work, historical relief work of the Flavian era, and of course is one of our great triumphal arches that really is more than even triumphing in the victory of Titus, but it's his victory of his death and overcoming that to become a divus, to become a god. So a commemoration arch as well for Titus that we can experience in the Roman Forum still today, the product of a great restoration work of the early 19th century as we explore the Roman Forum still today. And we consider that great religious importance that the menorah still conveys, a great relic from ancient Rome and ancient Judea.